Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to my review for Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 5. I don't even remember the title. Something about dying. Let Me Die? I wish that was the title. Die Trying. Die Trying. Episode 5, Die Trying. And, this one was different. I will say this episode was different than all prior Star Trek Discovery episodes, especially this season episodes. It had its moments of greatness. I'm going to be honest. It had its moments of greatness. Something I really couldn't say about any other episode. Episode 2 this season started off decently because we had a whole episode without Michael Burnham. But this episode actually showed moments of greatness. So the Discovery finally makes it to the Federation, and I'm not totally surprised, but my prediction that the Federation was on Bajor, unfortunately, completely and utterly wrong. Would have been much better, but no. So the episode starts. They're en route to the Federation. Doesn't quite make sense whether the Federation knows they're coming or not. If they did know they were coming, then you would think they would already know some of the people they'd be meeting. You would think they would have seen what, some of what was going to be, and they would have known what to expect. They didn't seem to know any of that. They get to the coordinates, and there's nothing there. Okay, but there's a distortion field. To which they said, oh, this is a distortion field. They must, they know we're coming. So it's safe to go through. So this distortion field is basically just a giant cloak that has cloaked the entire Federation of what's left of it. They go through this distortion field and it's all fancy. And inside, it's this giant bubble being projected. And there's tons and tons of starships. And we don't get a good look at any of them. Okay, we get one decent look at the USS Voyager J. Yes, the Voyager J. They talk about a new Constitution. They ask, is that a new Constitution class ship? Somebody says, I think it can hold 1,000 people. He said, no, 2,000 people. Which, I mean, if you just think back to Star Trek The Next Generation, I believe the Enterprise D could hold 10,000 people if need be. Okay, so the fact that they see a ship that they think can hold 2,000 people and they're all 900 years of progress, and the new Constitution can only hold maybe 2,000 people, that's not particularly impressive. So this is it. They're going through and they see the Federation. This is it. This is the Federation. There's some ships we get some crappy views of. And what's left of the Federation, the planet, is in fact just a donut in space with a shield over it and a rainforest below. Until he even says, that's a flying rainforest. Why is there no planet? Why did they not take one planet somewhere and just put the Federation on it? They have to cloak the planet. And they say that this whole sphere or whatever it is, that's distortion field, is being run by the combined power of all the ships inside of it, which means that all the ships can never leave or else this thing would be defenseless. So they literally have to have starships inside of it, else they just fall apart. So it seems like a terrible design. That said, they get there. We get insta-beam. They scan the ship. They want the first officer. Of course, everybody wants the first officer, the captain, and Tal to come over. And they surmise that their scanners must have knew that Tal was on board because they were so advanced, which makes me think they didn't call ahead. Because if they called ahead, they would have known Tal was on board because they would have said, hey, we have Admiral Tal with us, but now she's a 16-year-old girl. So they surmise that the scanners must have picked up Tal. So that's why I think they didn't call ahead. Okay, fine. Everybody's looking. There's the Voyager J. You don't get to see much of it. And Tilly, who's the math expert, says, 10 generations of evolution. Somebody has to correct it to 11. They hail, or they get it. They're getting a hail, whatever. And yeah, so they're hailing Federation headquarters, which they probably should have done ahead of time. And they're being scanned, and then they're going to get pulled in. They're going to get pulled in remotely. They don't have control of the ship. Whatever. The point is, they get on board. They meet an admiral who introduces himself as Charles Vance, the commander-in-chief of Starfleet, and also his security officer, we'll find out, is Lieutenant Willer, chief of security. They all beam off, and Saru puts the blonde woman, who I now find out her name is Lieutenant Nielsen, as in charge of the bridge, which seems weird because previously Commander Nan, who is a commander and was previously in charge when Saru and Michael Burnham were not on board. So I don't know why he left Nielsen in charge, except that they had to give her a line or two. Okay, so in talking with Vance, and I just keep thinking Vance of Vance Refrigeration from a much better show, The Office. Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration. So Admiral Vance doesn't want to tell them much. He tells them there's no record of Discovery ever coming to the future, obviously. He says Starfleet records show Discovery was destroyed. No mention of a spore drive. No mention of anything like this. And of course, Michael's like, well, of course, that's and Saru, he's like, well, that's standard Starfleet procedure, is just to erase records. No, Starfleet procedure was they were going to classify records. Here, now they're saying they've erased the records. Fine, whatever. So the Vance fills them in. He's like, Starfleet spent the 30th century fighting a temporal war, upholding temporal accords. And he's like, your very being here, that you're from a different time, is a crime. So, I mean, if there was a crime, what are they going to do? Arrest everybody, destroy the technology? Probably what he should do, technically. But like, okay, well, you're here. We're going to debrief your entire crew. And then we're going to see, we're probably going to take your ship. We're going to take apart your ship, and we're going to reassign your crew, which honestly is probably the right thing to do. Except that they get an emergency message that there's a bunch of Kilis, which are an alien species, a bunch of Kili refugees, have just 4 hours before they all die from a prion disease. 4 hours. In the 4 hours, they already start debriefing a good part of the crew, and Michael and Saru beam back to Discovery to tell the people the bad news that, hey, they're being broken up. But then Michael's like, we should just find out where these Kilis went. We can find the cure, and then that'll prove to them that we're a valuable ship, and they shouldn't break us all up. And so, of course, Michael suggests like stealing the information of where the Kili ship had come from. And Saru was like, Michael, I thought you would have learned something by now. We're Federation. We're home. We're not going to do our first act. It's not going to be stealing something. We'll have to requisition it through proper channels, which of course works out. They convinced the Admiral that we only have 3 hours left, 3 hours before all these people die. There's no time to train a different crew to use the Discovery to spore jump. In fact, it's just impossible because you couldn't jump without Stamets. So Stamets could just say, hey, I'm not going to jump without my crew, but whatever. So Saru decides he'll remain behind on the station, and Commander Burnham will be captain for this mission. She'll take over the Discovery. So also they send Lieutenant Willa, who is Vance's chief of security, with Burnham to go observe what's going on. So Burnham gets to call her first black alert, and the Discovery jumps to this planet. They figured out this planet that they were on because 1,000 years ago, the Federation was starting to get worried that this planet was becoming a seat of industry, and there was a lot of toxins in the air, and the UVB light from the sun was going to start mutating everything. And so they surmised that these aliens went to that planet, ate some native foods, but the foods were mutated because of all the toxins from 1,000 years ago, and that's what gave them a prion disease. And so the only way to cure them is to get a non-mutated version of the plant that they ate. But also, half the people on the ship, on the Federation, are terrible holograms. Okay, the Voyager, the EMH doctor on Voyager, and then the Mark II that we saw on the Prometheus, those were far better holograms than these holograms. These obvious holograms. But for whatever reason, doctors have been replaced with holograms and droids for the most part. So they have to go get one of these plants that haven't been mutated. Of course, they said, but all the plants have been mutated, so that's impossible. Well, Michael Burnham or Saru remembers, hey, wait a minute, back in the year 23, whatever, we had a seed vault ship. Okay, and it carried copies of all the important plants around the entire Federation. So surely if this ship still exists 930 years later, it would have a copy of that particular seed, even though they don't know what particular plant they ate. It's an entire planet worth of plants. They don't know what plant or what food these aliens ate. They know for sure this flying seed vault has the seeds. Now, a seed vault, we have one on Earth. It's up in Norway or even north of Norway. It's always cold. So even if the refrigeration fails, it will stay cold for thousands of years. And it's just it's got to be like away from all sources of heat and radiation. And so the very worst place you could ever put a seed vault is in a spaceship flying through radiation and space. Because you say, well, it's cold, only if you never go by a sun, perhaps. But there's so much radiation, that would be the worst place to put a seed vault. And if you did create a seed vault in space, it would be the thickest, most shielded ship ever created. But so, and by a miracle, this one particular ship still exists 930 years later. And this isn't a future version of the ship, it is that ship. That ship from the 22nd century is still roving around in the 32nd century. And they know where it is, even better. Vance knows where it is. It's 5 months away, though. It's 5 months away. So, of course, Saru and Burnham say, hey, we got a spore drive. We can be there like that. And these aliens, now they've only got 3 hours left. 3 hours at most. So Michael takes the Discovery. She gets permission. They take the Discovery. They black alert it there. Of course, there's no ship. But there is a giant ion storm. So, of course, the ship is in the ion storm just to build drama, because we have to show Dietmar as her piloting skills aren't quite up to task yet. That she needed some extra help from Ono. Ono is the one, Owo, the woman next to her whose name I forgot last week. Owo needed to give her a little bit of extra confidence boost. And so it took her a little longer than it should have, but they managed to get in, tracked her out the ship out of this ion storm. And the ship has very little power. They realize something's wrong. Also, it just so happens that the aliens that are caretaking this seed ship at this point in time are the same species as Commander Non, the Benzonite, I think they are, with the things to push air into their mouths. The Benzonite woman they picked up from the Enterprise, with Benzar, whatever they are, from the Enterprise, the security officer. So they happen to be Benzar. So she's going to go with Michael and Dr. Colbert. Of course, she doesn't need her breathing apparatus anymore, but now Michael and Dr. Colbert do, but they don't have anything on their face. They just wear a magic helmet that you never see except for that second it turns on. So they all beam over, and they're supposed to be beaming into a ship, and there's just plants growing all around. And they're like, somebody must have opened the seed vault for some reason. There's plants everywhere. They're looking for a family. There should be a family, 2 parents and 2 kids. And they find a hologram of a family. Looks like having a dinner or a game night or something. They're having fun, but they don't know what's going on. There seems to be a ghost following them, but they don't notice it. They're all confused as heck. And the ship is like got no power, except the seed vault seems to still have power. So, and then there was another section of the ship that has power. So Michael decides the only way you can get into and out of the actual seed vault is by beaming. So they actually have the line that the transporter chief of Discovery has to be on call the entire time of this mission. We have never seen a transporter chief in Discovery. In fact, it's been the kind of thing of jokes, is that whoever happens to be around operates the transporter. Tilly, Georgiou, Stamets, everybody's operated the transporter. We've never seen a dedicated transporter chief. But in this episode, we're told that the transporter chief has to be on call. Of course, we never see who they are. So they beam Michael into the seed vault, and it turns out there's a password. Okay, you need voice access. So they have to find Dr. Attis. Dr. Attis is the the guy in charge. He's the main scientist. He's the father who is in charge of the seed vaults. They need his specific password, and I assume his voice pattern, to actually open the vault and get the seeds they want. So they're looking for Dr. Attis, and then Michael's in there, and then this ghost thing, who's supposed to be only able to access the vault through beaming, appears and like tries to take a swing at her, and he's phasing in and out of time, but it kind of looks like the programmable matter effect they used earlier in the season. It's all a mess. It's a giant mess. And then so for some reason, while they're on this seed vault, everybody's whispering, especially Michael Burnham. She's gone to a whisper voice, whisper, whisper, whisper. I literally had to raise the volume up. I don't know why they're whispering. I think somebody confused vault with library, and they thought they were using their library voices. But no, they're whispering the entire time. They call over to Discovery, tell them that what they found. Oh, the doctor found that all the power was being used in stasis chambers, and we see the wife and the 2 kids are all in stasis chambers. But he says usually stasis chambers are meant to keep people, alive so they can be revived. He's like, but these people are already dead. They can't be revived. So basically, the father put his family in there, hoping one day he could revive them, even though he really knows they're dead already. So they call over to Discovery, tell them what happened. The brain team of Tilly, Jet Reno, and Stamets are apparently the only people in engineering, along with Lieutenant Willa, the security chief from the future. And she's observing them and how they work. And she's like, you guys don't seem to be very professional. And Tilly's like, it's what we do. And Reno says, oh, I've been trying to raise the bar. A lot of jokes going back and forth. Most of them miss. But so they explain it, and they're like, oh, I know what it is. I bet he tried to beam, right? The only way to get in and out of the vault is by beaming. I bet he was beaming into the vault just as there was a coronal mass ejection, and the coronal mass ejection, which they have to explain to Lieutenant Willa, which I would think if you were in Starfleet, you would know what a coronal mass ejection was. But he's like, it's like a star burping. So yeah, she got Tilly-splained. It's like a star burping. Anyway, because he was in the act of beaming as the coronal mass ejection happened, of course, something happened to him on the quantum level, which now causes him to phase in and out of reality. It also caused him massive internal injuries, but he's still alive. So they've like, oh yes, we can get him back. They have to beam him out of where he is, and they can beam him back, and they can save him from being phased, but he's still going to have massive internal injuries, and he's going to die fairly soon if they don't get him back to medical. If they take him back with them, then they can save his life. But so they beam him through, they unphase him from time. And so Nan, who's his same species, goes over to talk to him to try to ask him to open up the seed vault. But he knows his family is dead, even though she's like, she doesn't tell him that they're dead. She tries to be nice to him, and he's not answering her. He doesn't want, he's in shock. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. He's done. So Dr. Kohlberg goes to Michael Burnham and says, of course, Michael, you're the only one who can do this. She's like, but Nan has so much more in common. He's like, yeah, that's why. She's being too nice. You have to do it because you're Michael Burnham and you're the only one who can save the day every single time. And so Michael Burnham, of course, goes and talks to him and, of course, convinces him to use his voice code. And what would you know? Of course, what was his password? His daughter's names. Like the first thing anybody would have tried. So he opens up the seed vault and he gives seeds to Michael. Now, are these every seed from that planet? Are these one specific seed? God only knows. But Michael gives the seeds to Dr. Kohlberg to head back to start making the antidote with. In the meantime, Michael and Nan and the guy are left on the station. The guy doesn't want to leave. Dr. Kohlberg says he's got to come back, and Kohlberg says that he's not making rational decisions. But Michael's like, we'll take care of this. So they send the doctor back. They talk to the guy. Basically, in place, and what I realized was going to happen is that Commander Nan trades places with the guy. Since it's already set up for her physiology, she stays on the seed ship, and he'll go back with them to save his life, and his family's just dead. So Commander Nan is going to give a proper burial to the family, even though they're on a spaceship. There's no place to bury anybody. Whatever. Oh, we also found out that Commander Nan's people, the Benzine, joined the Federation. We also found out that Kanar, or Saru's people, they joined the Federation too. In fact, Vance says at the peak, the Federation had 380 member worlds, 350 member worlds, but they were down to just 38 worlds now. Whatever. We also learn about the Emerald Chain. The Emerald Chain is the name for the Andorian and Orion Syndicate. They're apparently the big bad guy in the future. They're causing all sorts of problems. They're the ones that are looting planets and causing all types of issues. So the Emerald Chain is who they're going to be fighting. Here's one. So Sienna Tal, Admiral Sienna Tal, the host before Adira. The host before Adira was Gray, her boyfriend, and the host before Gray was Sienna Tal, who was an admiral in Starfleet and a good friend, if not more, of Admiral Vance. So the first thing Adira tells Vance when she sees him is that Sienna never meant to keep you waiting. He just couldn't leave Earth without seeing snow one last time. So Vance says, he always was sentimental. And that, okay, you think about it. Yeah, that sounds nice, right? That sounds nice. But in the Star Trek universe, he could have beamed anywhere on Earth and seen snow instantly, okay? If there was no snow wherever he was, he could have beamed to the Antarctic, or he could have beamed to the top of Mount Everest, or he could have beamed anywhere else on Earth that there would be snow and seen snow. There was literally no reason to wait years before leaving a planet just so you see snow. There's snow somewhere on the ground at all times on Earth, I promise. See, these are lines that just don't work. They're terribly written lines by people who don't know Star Trek. So this whole mission of them going to get the seeds and bringing them back happens all within 3 short hours. Because of course they make it back in time and they've got the antidote and they save all these Kili aliens And yay, now they're proving themselves that, hey, we're a ship that can actually do some good. I disagree personally. I think that if they were a ship that was really looking to do the best for Starfleet, I think if Admiral Vance had 1 ounce of intelligence, he would tear the ship apart, figure out how it works, so that they could give spore drive to all the Federation ships. Because let's face it, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one, in this case, the Discovery. But they don't do that. Spoiler alert, they don't do that. Another thing that happened while they were on the seed vault is that while the holograph family was playing, there was a music chord playing, and Michael Burnham recognized it as the same lullaby that Adira was playing on the cello, and who she said was a lullaby her father or her parents used to sing to her when she was a kid. And it was also something that her boyfriend Gray used to play. And now Michael Burnham has heard the exact same notes thousands of light years away, or hundreds of light years away, on the seed vault. And so Michael Burnham is realizing there's something weird about that music. And the future Lieutenant Willa, Chief of Security, she heard that music too. She's heard it too. And so Michael Burnham is like, isn't this weird? How do you and Adira and this Dr. Addis, how does everybody know this same note? There's not enough time for it to get across the galaxy without the dilithium that everybody would recognize it. So something is going on weird, that there's a musical note that the entire galaxy seems to recognize, but nobody knows where it came from. So it is likely has something to do with the burn, because they also asked Admiral Vance about the burn. And basically Admiral Vance is like, we really don't know. We have competing theories. There's no particular one theory that's better than any other. And frankly, they don't have time to worry about why the burn happened. I would think it would be pretty important. You'd want to know, is it going to happen again? But no, they're not worried about why it happened. They're just moving on with their lives. So they're never going to get a good explanation. So of course, Michael Burnham is going to have to be the one to investigate the burn too, because no one else seems to want to investigate it. And I bet now that this one, I don't know however many chords of music it is, but this one little melody is going to somehow be related to the burn somehow. So back after Discovery gets back to Starfleet, what's left of it, Admiral Vance tells them there's no more 5-year missions. That that exploration is a luxury they can no longer afford. And Saru gives a speech about how this painter, Giotto or something, brought humans out of the Dark Ages, because he created a 3-point perspective, and it let humans start looking up, and that is what brought the human race out of the Dark Ages, which I call a big load of bullcrap on. I'm sorry, an artist drawing did not take people out of the Dark Ages. I feel like that's something art teachers tell their students to make them feel better. Okay, the people came out of the Dark Ages because of science, engineering, and medicine, and changes in politics and all types of things. It wasn't because of art. Maybe I think the art was a symptom. The art improved as people's lives improved. I don't think the art caused it, but whatever. You know what? That's maybe I'm biased. So even though the Discovery went with its entire crew, they did leave behind Georgiou. And Georgiou has a very interesting conversation with this guy with the black glasses, whose name I have no idea. He seems to be like he's a psychiatrist or a psychologist. He's evaluating her. And she asks, like, why are you wearing glasses? I mean, it's the year of fucking 10,000 or whatever it is. Why are you wearing glasses? He's like, I just like the way they look. It makes me look smart, which is probably the only honest thing he said. Although it's possible those glasses contain something magic or whatever he can see. But Georgiou, they immediately detect that she's a Terran, meaning she's from the mirror universe. So they're like, they knew who she was. They know that I don't know if they knew who she was, but they seemed to know who she was. And so they brought her in for questioning. Now, it seemed like they're bringing the entire crew in for questioning, but they couldn't question the entire crew of 87 people in 1 hour. But they tried. We saw quite a few debriefs going on in a montage. And that montage, I assumed, was over the course of a day. But it seemed like it was all over the course of 20 or 30 minutes because they still had 3 hours to save these people by the time they left. But Georgiou is being questioned by this guy and 3 or 4 other people, all dressed in white. But Georgiou instantly recognizes those other people are holograms, and she defeats the holograms by blinking. She starts rapidly blinking her eyes in a specific motion, and the holograms start asking her, "Why are you blinking?" And she's like, "Well, why aren't you blinking?" And then they literally just, as they try to process why she's blinking, the holograms just disappear because she overloads them by blinking. And so the guy is impressed. He's like, "You've bested my holograms." Like he's the guy from The Princess Bride. He's like, "You've bested my giant. You've bested my swordsman." No, he's like, "You've bested my holograms by the power of blinking." So he's trying to get a psychological profile on why Georgiou is there. But in this process, they destroy the mirror universe. It is an unforgivable problem. And I'll be honest, if not for this, I might have rated this a much better episode. They destroy the mirror universe. He says that they have found that Terrans have a subatomic structure difference in their stem cells that make them violent. Okay, this is a disaster for Star Trek canon and lore, and this is exactly the type of thing I was worried about, of them going to the future and thinking, "Oh, they can't F up the timeline." They can F up the timeline plenty. Okay, because they just said now, and I don't believe it. This is why I don't think Discovery is canon. But if we were to believe Discovery is canon, they're now saying that Terrans are violent people because of their physiology. There's it doesn't even make sense that there's a subatomic structure on their stem cells. It's a total bullshit. Doesn't know anything about science, technobabble answer, but that they physically detected this change in their stem cells, and that's why all Terrans are inherently violent, evil people. It is a complete and utter destruction of the Terran universe. The whole point of the mirror universe was that, hey, if events went a little differently, this is the type of people humans turned out to be. It wasn't because they were biologically different. It was just because something changed in their timeline. But no, now they want to say biologically different. And I guess only humans have this defect. All the other alien species must be okay. It's just the humans that have this defect in the mirror universe. So he gives her the bad news that, hey, you know what? The Federation at least still exists, and your Terran universe died centuries ago. And Georgiou seems very upset about this news. He also tells her, "I bet you didn't know that the 2 universes have been growing further apart." I don't know how universes get further apart, but then he tells her there hasn't been a single crossing between the 2 universes in over 500 years. Now, I would say a single recorded crossing. How does he know this? I mean, I guess they've been keeping tabs, but there hasn't been a recorded crossing between universes in over 500 years. This actually does seem to upset Georgiou, not immediately, but later on the Discovery after they get back. Georgiou is just looking out the window, and Michael comes to talk to her, and she's just not there. Michael's got to say, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And then she finally wakes up. Like, "Why would you ever ask me that question if I'm okay?" And she walks away. While she was being interrogated, the guy says, I bet I know. The only reason he doesn't understand, why would Georgiou join the Discovery crew? And he's like, you must care about someone on that ship. He sees her looking at his Starfleet badge, and he's like, I see you looking at my badge. She's like, yeah, I was getting bored. I was thinking of taking it apart, see if there was anything useful in it. So he just gives her his badge, and she breaks it. She breaks it with her shoe. Okay, as if it was made out of plastic, and just breaks into pieces, which is ridiculous. Even if it was made out of metal, even if it was made today, it wouldn't shatter like it did. But she breaks it with her shoe, and that's when he goes into about how Terrans are biologically different. Just ridiculous. Ridiculous that she could break his comm badge with her shoe. And then he realizes that she must care deeply about somebody on the Discovery. So she's all upset, I think, because of the realizing she's either that the Empire, the Terran Empire, has fallen, or that she's never going to get home to her home universe in this time because the universes are too far away. So I'm guessing this is the episode where she realizes she wants to go home, or at least try to get back to a time period where she can go home if she ever wants to. And we all know, because of the so-called Section 31 show that's supposedly coming one day, Georgiou has to get out of the future. So I'm guessing this sets up the reason why. I would count it at least 3 times in this episode where somebody goes to Michael Burnham and literally says, Michael Burnham, you are the bestest ever, and we couldn't do anything without you, and you are the most special person in the galaxy. Yes, Saru, Nan and Michael didn't even get along. Now they're going to be best friends. They're going to hug each other before they leave. It's ridiculous. It's just more and more the Michael Burnham show, Michael Burnham is the only one who can do everything. They have to put her in the lead. They have to give her every line. She has to be the one to go to Trill. She has to be the one to save the ship. She has to be the one in this episode to get all the credit for everything that's ever happened. Of course, they have to thank her again for saving all organic life in the universe because of control. It's ridiculous. It's sickening. That said, I like the idea of the Discovery going on missions for a Federation again. I like the idea of it being new to us, that there's something to explore. Even if it's not new to them, but new to the other people in the future, it's new to us. I think they might have a way to save half the season. We're already halfway through the season, or a little bit less than halfway through the season. They might have a way to save the bulk of the season if they were going on missions of exploration. Unfortunately, and I don't mean this because of the person, but the preview for next week's episode, Booker's back. And it looks like they're just fighting the Andorians and the Orion Syndicate again, which is not really exploration at all. So as much as I had some high hopes for this episode, and maybe future episodes, they're kind of dashed again. I don't know what next week's going to bring, but it looks like it's just going to be an action episode. I don't know why they would bring Booker back if they're not. I mean, I understand why they bring Booker back, but it looks like the entire point of coming part of the Federation is going to go down the toilet next episode. Actually, despite all of the terrible things they say about Michael Burnham and the terrible science and the terrible writing, the fact that they did talk about some things, they gave me some hope in this episode. I'm actually going to give this episode perhaps the highest rated Discovery episode I've ever done. I'm not 100% sure, but this was actually a 5 out of 10. Okay? The Star Trek in it is horrible. The Trek in it is terrible, but the sci-fi in it was decent. The sci-fi in it, if this was not a Star Trek series, it wouldn't be a bad episode. So I'm going to give this a very mixed 5 out of 10. Would I suggest people start watching the show because of this? No. But, let's see where the season brings us. I'm not above being, not above changing my mind. If we had more episodes like this, it wouldn't be painful. This did seem a bit drawn out to watch. I'll admit, I think they probably could have made it 15 minutes shorter. But, hey, we got some answers. We got to see a future. And they got to go on a mission and actually do something. The timing seemed ridiculous. The 3-hour limit they put on, it felt like they were gone a day, if not more. But whatever. And I'm interested. I'm interested to see what's going to happen next week. 5 out of 10. We'll leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed this review. I know I wasn't screaming and ranting and raving. I know some of you probably upset that I didn't. Maybe next week. Qapla all. Remember to share, like, comment, and subscribe. And bird out.